Welcome to She Considers a Field podcast with coach, encourager, and fellow entrepreneur and homeschooling mama of four, Anna McLaughlin. As a homeschooling entrepreneur, you are uniquely positioned to impact the kingdom of God both deep through your investment in your children and wide through your business. And yet guilt, frustration, and overwhelm can hold you back from all that God has for you. Come with me on a journey to walk in deeper peace, purpose, and joy, because God has given you a legacy to build, and I'm here to help you enjoy the ride. Hello and welcome, friend, to She Considers a Field. I am so glad you're here. Thank you for hanging out with us today. I'm going to kick us off with prayer because we want to make sure that this time is fruitful. So, Lord, thank you so much for bringing us together today. I pray blessings on the head of every single woman who listens to this podcast today, that it would be time well invested as she seeks to advance your kingdom here on earth through her labors, through her homeschool, through her business, through her child rearing, through her care of her husband, through all of the different things to which you've called her as a daughter, as a friend, as a sister. Whatever role she may wear, whatever many hats she may wear, bless her and lead her. Thank you, Lord, for who you are. Lead us as we talk about hierarchy of covenants today. Thank you for showing me this picture of your proper order for things all those years ago. I love you, Lord. Amen. Okay. So I mentioned an episode or two ago that we were going to talk about hierarchy of covenants at some point. I had totally forgotten that I already had notes for hierarchy of covenants. So we are doing this thing. Hierarchy of covenants. This was a concept that the Lord gave to me, let's see, many years ago. I don't even know. Many years ago, after my husband and I were married, after we already had a baby or two, and it really settled some things for me and has been a touchstone more times than I can even count in the years to come. Okay, in the years that have followed. When I talk about hierarchy of covenants, what I mean is that God has given us an order that we need to have in mind whenever we are making decisions, whenever we're setting boundaries. There is a priority within God's kingdom that directs us whom we should prioritize and how we should protect the relationships that we have been given. Okay. So there are a small handful of covenants that we can enter into. And I'm kind of a covenant girl. That's how my theology leans. But I think that this concept is going to resonate, even if that is not your theological bent. Okay. Covenants were the things in the Old Testament where the animals would be cut into. This is what happened between Abraham and God when God committed to Abraham, I'm going to make of you a great nation. Okay. Back in Genesis, there was God called Abraham to cut these animals in two and then essentially create an aisle. And this is what the marriage ceremony mimics. It's what it depicts. So, and if I remember correctly, it's been a while. Once again, I'm talking about things I'm like, that would have been good to look up, Anna. That would have been good, but we're just going with it. I believe, if I remember correctly, that this is actually how the Jewish marriage ceremony would take place. And this was how you entered into contracts, into binding contracts. You would sacrifice animals and put the halves of the bodies on either side of, you'd basically create an aisle with one half on one side, one half on the other. And you would walk through, if you have little ears in the car or wherever you are, just be aware. You would walk through the blood. And effectively what you were saying is, may I become like this animal if I break my word. Okay? So there was no accidental covenant. You didn't mistakenly enter into this binding agreement. Okay? You were literally intentionally entering into a blood covenant and saying, may I be split in half like this animal is if I break my vow. So God himself, through the fire pot in Genesis, passed through the animals and said, may I be like these animals if I break my vow. Crazy. Imagine that, the God of heaven and earth, like, I'm not sure if this is the right word, demeans himself, humbles himself. We'll say humbles himself to enter into covenant with a man whom he knows will not be able to keep up his end. He knows. The only way that we are able to keep up our end is by God's grace. So he effectively takes both parts. Not only will I do, but I will then enable you to do. Okay? The same is taking place in a marriage ceremony, and it literally did. My recollection from a study I took many years ago literally did look like this, that's where we have our aisle in a marriage ceremony is because of this concept of walking through the sacrificial offerings. Okay? So, we have a very small number of covenants that we enter into as human beings over the course of our lives, okay? We enter into a covenant with Christ where we give our lives to him, and in exchange, he gives us himself. We get his righteousness imputed to us. That is salvation. Those of us who are married, we enter into a covenant of marriage. And then in my faith tradition, baptism is also a covenant, okay? And Colossians 2 kind of paints that picture a little bit if you ever want to look into that. Beyond that, pastors can enter into a covenant with their churches, but there's really not a lot of other covenants in our lives. Okay. So, hierarchy of covenants says effectively first God, then husband, then children. Now, we know this, right? And we talk about it. But the piece that the Lord gave me that I desperately needed at the time was this. I was having some like conflict because we had a relationship where it was like unclear. It seemed like my husband and I were not in agreement on how to handle this dynamic that was happening in outside of our home. So, like, where do we what do we need to do to get this thing resolved? Okay? It's kind of a tricky situation. We knew we had a part in it. We knew that other people had their part too, and it's like, what do we do to move forward? And the Lord made it very clear to me, when any lower order covenant is interfering with any higher order covenant, you must enforce a boundary to protect the higher order covenant. Because what I was doing, and listen, I know I'm not alone here. If you are a homeschooling entrepreneur mom, you are digging deep to do your very best. I know you are. That's why you're even listening to this conversation. Who wants to listen to a nerdy lawyer who now homeschools and has businesses? Somebody that wants to work really, really hard to serve her people, right? Who thinks deeply, who dives in and goes, okay, what can we do differently next time? And so what I was doing was I was like, let's work on us. Okay, babe, let's work on us. And every time there would be an issue coming up, I just dove so deeply into our part of it that my husband just ended up coming away feeling condemned and discouraged. And it didn't really solve the problem because ultimately, yes, we have a part. Yes, we always have a part. But the thing that the Lord called me to was, hey, listen, stop like apologizing and trying to fix your piece until you've gotten your unit safe. Okay. You need to make sure your husband knows you have his back. You need to make sure he knows that you respect and love him. And then you can work on all of the things that might need to be worked through. That's fine. But a boundary is needed first to protect the unit. Okay. So this kind of rhythm of decision making has served me so many times over the years because so often the things that clamor for our attention most are actually the things that have the least right to do so. Okay. So you think about the hierarchy. We've got God first, then our husband, then our children, then others. Where do you get the most flack? Probably from your coworkers, your colleagues, your team members, right? Hey, I need help. Hey, I need help. Hey, about this. How about this? How about this? And you're scrambling around and you're trying to take care of all of them. Meanwhile, the Lord's not forcing you to spend time with him. Meanwhile, oftentimes your husband is not going to be clamoring over top of your children. Your children are going to have a hard time clamoring over top of your business. And so we can end up really disordered, you guys. We can end up actually in the opposite order to what we need in order to serve our people well. Okay. So I'm just going to pull in a little bit of scripture just to lay the foundation. I know this isn't anything that you guys are like, I never would have thought of that before. But the piece that was so profound to me was how it helps us make decisions. Okay. So in Ephesians 5, wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, his body, and is himself its Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to. Blah, blah. Let me try that again. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church, because we are members of his body. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This mystery, this is just so good. We don't really need this part, but we're not stopping. This mystery is profound, and I am saying that it refers to Christ and the church. However, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. Mm, y'all. Yeah, so that's Ephesians 5. And listen, I'm just going to touch on this real quick. Respect is not to be earned. I'm going to say that one more time. Respect is not to be earned. Your husband is to be granted your respect in the same way that you want him to grant you his love. Imagine if our guys came home today and they were like, "You didn't do the dishes. The house is kind of a wreck. You didn't get a lot of stuff done with school. Like, I don't love you right now." "Ah, no way." I mean, he would be in the doghouse forever, right? No way. And yet we consider respect something conditional. I will offer him my respect when he has earned it. I don't respect him, he doesn't clean up after himself. I don't respect him, he doesn't really lead us in Bible time. I don't respect him, he doesn't really take care of the kids like I want him to. Listen, y'all, we are called to respect our husbands simply because they are our husbands, okay? And this is really interesting. Women were seen in those days as subservient to everybody. And so the Lord actually created a covering of protection for us to say, actually, the submission is to her husband. Okay? We submit to her husband, to our husbands, not to everybody. So if you have any sort of stories, and we're going to dig into this because man, do we need to in the church. Okay? Women of God need to understand this. It is okay for us to show up in our CEO energy. Okay? It is okay for us to lead significant businesses that make a significant financial impact. In the passage that is the origin of the name for this podcast, in Proverbs 31, we see that the righteous woman is well honored among her home, like among her husband and her children, but she's also well honored in the marketplace. It doesn't say her husband is honored in the marketplace. It doesn't say that he's the front man and she's the little woman back behind. She's the one who's out there trading. She's the one who's out there considering a field and buying it, real estate, right? She's the one who's doing this stuff in the marketplace. And that is actually honored because when you have a strong woman, what the Lord asks, like, He wants us in our strength, right? He wants us to be stepping out in boldness for the sake of the gospel. We need strong women of God, but we are to be subject to our husbands. In this area, the Lord is calling us to submit so that our home is well ordered. Okay? So that's the husband piece. For the children piece, we're just in the next chapter. We're in Ephesians 6. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Okay? And listen, since the family is a unit, what the father is called to do, the mother is called to help carry out, right? So this is our work. We're to raise them up in the fear, let me read it again, the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Okay. Bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Now we know this, so I'm not going to dive too deeply into trying to convince you that's important that you take care of your children. But here's where I want to show you where the rubber meets the road. Okay. When I was making the decision to leave the practice of law, it got really muddy. It got confusing, right? Because I could earn a really good income, which helped the family. And then, then we could like pay off our house and then we could go on all these trips and we could have all these experiences and I didn't know how to make the decision. But part of what was making it so cloudy is I felt really bad. I felt like I was wasting my education, right? I spent all this time, I spent all this money going to law school. I felt like I was wasting my brain a little bit and I felt like I was letting my firm down. one of the things that is just part of any profession is that it takes a while to really get your footing. The more high like, the more intellectual, the more mental and, skilled the more skilled why can't I get my words out around this? Basically, the more skill that's required in your practice, the more time it takes for you to actually be profitable for your company. And so the average time for lawyers was 5 to 6 years. For the first 3, 4, 5 years, they're kinda, like, carrying you along, hoping that you're gonna stay with them long term so that you can really, really help them out, so that you can really be a benefit to the firm. Well, I left at year 5. Right in that sweet spot where I was starting to be helpful. I was like, "I'm going home to be with my babies." Now that's a legit reason to go home. What were they gonna say? It's not like I was going to a competitor firm, I wasn't going to an in-house opportunity. I was leaving because I wanted to raise my children. But in my mind, I was letting them down. And this hierarchy of covenants brought so much clarity to me because if I looked at what is best for my relationship with the Lord, well, he can enable me to do any kind of thing, right? If I'm called to do it, I can do it in him. But I kept up against a lot of frustration and exhaustion and weariness, and I knew that the way I was that at that season of my life, after 5 years of really growing and seeking to be changed, I was still constantly coming to the end of myself, and it felt like the grace to do that thing was was waning, right? It was no longer where he wanted me to be. With my husband, I was irritable and frustrated in that job because it required a lot of me. I was up late. I didn't get very much sleep. Like, there was a season y'all, I went part-time as a lawyer, and part-time was, like, so 75%, so I got 75% pay, and then here was my schedule. I'd get to work between 9:30, 9 or 9:30. I was not in there very early. You'll find out why on the back end of my day. And then I worked until 3:30 or 4 when there wasn't a deal that required more of me. Then I went home, spent time with my family, put my daughter to bed at 6:30, and worked until 11. Around the time that I was logging off, my daughter woke up for her midnight feeding, and she cluster nursed until 6 o'clock in the morning. And then I would sleep from, like, 6 to 8 and get up and go to work. And then weekends and holidays and all that stuff. And listen, this is a great law firm, but it's a law firm. You just have to show up, right? And so this, so so with my marriage, we didn't get a lot of time together. The time that we did get to spend together, it was oftentimes talking about how much I hated my job, how tired I was, how worn down I was, and our relationship wasn't really thriving. And then I looked at my kid and I was like, "I see you 2 hours a day when you're awake." Maybe more, right? As she got older, there was more time that she was awake, but it wasn't enough. You know, our kids need time with us. They need connection with us. They need space and room. And I could see from some of her behaviors that she was really reacting to me being unavailable. And so 1, 2, 3, all the boxes check. It's really clear what I need to do. I need to set a boundary with my law firm. And there was a season where the boundary was like what my available, I went 3/4 time. I had limited availability in the afternoon, so I had more time with my little kid and everything like that. But more was needed, and so the boundary was actually that I quit. Okay? In relationships, in our businesses, those customers, they can wait. Let there be time that belongs just to your people. Okay? As a homeschooling entrepreneur mama, you are uniquely positioned to impact the kingdom of God both deep and wide. Isn't it time you partnered with a coach to help you close the gap between where you are and where you feel God calling you to go? As a veteran homeschool mama and seasoned entrepreneur and investor myself, I understand the unique challenges you face. And as a life coach, former lawyer, and woman of faith, I offer a unique combination of strategy, mindset, and spirit led discernment to help you identify your next steps. Click the link in the show notes now to schedule a free exploratory call. I would love to partner with you in taking your business and homeschool journey to the next level. Now I'm going to bring up a hard one. Family. We leave our father and mother and we become one with our spouse. If you have a relationship with your mother or your father or your siblings that encroaches upon your marriage, if there is discord between your family and your spouse, your significant other has to know that you are on their team, okay? And that is really hard. I'm just gonna honor that. That is really, really hard. But if you don't do that, then you're actually in violation of the covenant. And I say this with all tenderness, knowing how hard it is. I've walked this road too, okay? And I think it's unusual to not have to walk this out because as parents, our heart is to hold, right? And our heart is to protect. And so even the best of parents can overstep inadvertently and start to shield and shelter their adult child even in their marriage relationship. When that comes up, listen, boundaries don't have should not be. Boundaries in love should not be this crazy slam door in the face. Rather, we're called to just like take a step back, right? A boundary can just include kind of putting oil on your back, like the phrase water off a duck's back, where it just doesn't stick. We're Teflon, doesn't stick, right? Whatever feedback your parent may have, your sibling may have, you can say, "You know what? That's not something I'm willing to discuss." You can say, "You know what? Thanks for the thought. We've got this." You can say, "You know what? I'm really working on being more respectful and honoring of my husband. I feel like I'm not gonna be able to have these conversations anymore." Right? My issue, my deal. I just can't do it anymore. It leads me to be critical and condemning, and I just have made a commitment before the Lord that I'm not gonna do that anymore, right? So that's hierarchy of covenants. We've gotta watch the squeaky wheels, okay? Our extended family members, our coworkers, our team members, our customers, all of those things, they are going to feel the loudest, and they can get kinda pushy sometimes, right? I mean, I've talked to you guys in the past, I've lost customers because I wasn't as available as they thought I should be. But I've found it really important to have a container that is just for my people. This is the time that is just for my children. This is the time that is just for my husband. This is the time that's just for our nuclear family altogether. Okay. And I'm going to mention to you guys too. I'm checking my notes. I've just been going on and on. I'm like, what am I actually talking about here? Okay. I will mention to you. What was I going to mention to you guys? Ah, yeah. Homeschool time is not quality time with your children. It can be very sweet and enriching, and if you feel like if the relationship is going swimmingly, that's awesome. But if you're getting any sort of attitude or check from your kids, it might be worth looking at how much of the time I'm spending with them is actually instruction time versus enjoying them. I wish I could remember the name of the author and speaker that I first heard this from. I think she talks a lot about, like, enjoying your kids, and she's been around for a long time, but I cannot remember her name for the life of me, but she had a caller come on and talk about how frustrating it was with her daughter, and they were just always at each other, and it was so miserable, and the girl was, like, 8 years old, and the woman said, "Put the phone down, I'll wait, go up to your daughter's room and tickle her for a minute." And you could hear, like, the little girl surprised and laughing and everything like that, and the mom came back down, she's like, "Thank you so much, I needed that." We forget, because we're with our kids all the time, that we're maybe not being intentional about getting heart to heart with our kids all the time, okay? So, we need to protect the time. Okay, so let's zoom out just a little bit and talk about some examples of how this hierarchy of covenants thing might play out. For example, of course, not speaking from experience, right? But say that maybe you're having some quiet time with the Lord and one of your kids comes and needs something from you. Now, this is going to be very age dependent, but I started training my kids early on that when mommy was praying, they didn't immediately get to interrupt and get exactly what they wanted. So, aside from crises, which are age specific, a crisis for a toddler is a lot lower bar than a crisis for a teenager, one would hope, but I would tell them, "Okay, I need 5 more minutes. Now listen, I wouldn't take, like, another hour necessarily, maybe I didn't get that. That's part of that is just recognizing I'm gonna have to get up early to have time with the Lord, or recognize that there is season or late or whatever it is, or recognize that my time with him might be shorter. But my kids know of all the time that mommy is doing something, that is the most sacred. And so there is a boundary where I would let them sit down next to me and color on my Bible. I would let them write on my prayer journal, but there would be this sense of reverence and respect for the time. Okay. For example, another example, if you are trying to get out on a date and your kids are pulling on your leg, mommy, don't leave, don't leave, don't leave. One of the things, this looks different for every marriage, for every couple, depending on comfort. There were seasons when our dates were kind of like in air quotes, and we would literally go down to the basement while a babysitter or a parent, or maybe even maybe even a video would be kind of tending to the kids, and we would just have some time to connect. He and I remember right after one of our kids was born, our Valentine's Day date was in the basement, and then when the baby needed us, I would bring the baby down, nurse the baby, and then the babysitter would take the baby. It was a finished basement, so it was a it was not just, like, in a hovel in the dark and moist depths of some sort of root cellar or something. But our kids have known from the beginning that mommy and daddy's relationship actually takes priority over our relationship with them because they're leaving and we're one. And so modeling that for our children creates security, and it creates a sense of order. They know that they are not to get between mommy and daddy. If my kids want to get in big, big, big trouble, I call it forum shopping. Again, former lawyer. If they wanna get in big trouble, they go and ask one parent, they get an answer, a final answer, and then they go and ask the other parent to see if they'll get another answer. If they know that one parent said no, they cannot come between us by then trying to get a yes from the other one. They are permitted to ask permission to ask the other parent, because sometimes one of us doesn't really care, right? It's like, "No, you can't do that, but I guess I don't care if the other person feels strongly about it, so that's fine. Yeah, go ask, see what they say." Or the parents, my husband and I'll have that conversation directly, but our children know. They do not get to come between us, okay? And if they do, it's a pretty serious offense in our family. We've got just a short list of real serious ones, and that's one. For example, if a parent of you or your spouse has an opinion about how the family's running, about what you're doing with your finances, about what you're doing with your children, again, water off a duck's back. That is a point in time where maybe that feedback is not permitted, or maybe a little distance is required. It is so important to protect that marriage. It is so important to protect the family unit, because it's like, beware of voices that say it's selfish to do so. Chances are they're being a little bit self-serving. The family unit is the training ground for kingdom warriors to grow up in. Mighty men and women of God are forged in the fire of a strong family. It is so important to protect your family. And let me just commend to you such a beautiful book on this topic, which is Families Where Grace is in Place by Jeffrey Van Vonderen. He does a beautiful job of understanding both functional and more dysfunctional systems that can arise in families, and we've all got them. Let's just normalize that. We've all got them. Hierarchy of Covenants for me has been such a clear, simple guide. It's not simple to walk it out, but it's simple in practice. Or it's simple in no, it's not simple in practice. Let me try that again. It's not simple in practice, but it's simple in its fact. Okay? The rules of the road are simple, and it has helped to bring so much clarity to so many of these points of challenge. Now, I know I just hit on a few, but I wanted to make sure to kind of clarify and, like, give a few real world examples that we've all faced as spouses, as parents, as adult children, and give you guys just a few examples of, okay, practically speaking, here's how this can play out. All right, so I'm going to say one last thing about hierarchy of covenants. I had someone ask me one time, where does self-care come into all of this? Okay? And I actually found a beautiful scripture that speaks to this. I believe that self-care is a subset of the first order covenant, So I talk about it first order, second order, third order. So God, husband, children. So self-care is a subset of the first order covenant. We have to take care of ourselves because God gave us ourselves. It's a part of stewardship. And really, ultimately, like tending to any relationship in your life is a part of stewardship, especially our covenant relationships, because God has given them into our care. We are entrusted with our husband. He is the only husband that we have right now. Right now, right? He is the only my kids are always ask like, "Can you marry someone else if daddy dies?" And I'm like, "I really don't wanna talk about that, but yes." Like, as a former lawyer, I will answer any question, and I try to be very just analytical about it. But anyway, yes, he's the only husband you have, right? I'm the only wife he has. I'm the only mother my children have. And so God has entrusted them to me, and I have to take care of those relationships. I am not the only potential life coach somebody will have. I'm not the only podcast you can listen to. If I were to disappear tomorrow, you'd go find somebody else to listen to. I'd miss you, right? But like, you're going to be okay. But if my people lose me, that's something altogether different, right? And so too, our self care. Okay. So this is in First Corinthians 6. Okay. Do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? You are not your own, for you were bought with a price. So glorify God in your body. And it's talking specifically about sexual immorality. But I think what Paul's really doing here is he's using an expansive principle in a narrow way, but the expansive principle still goes far beyond just sexual immorality. It's not like take care of your body here, but it doesn't matter about other places. And so self care, rest, moving our bodies, taking quality supplements, you know, being with people who love us, getting out of fight or flight. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I can think about all the things that I really love, life coaching, right? Play, getting your toes in the sand. Listen, I'm a big fan of grounding. When I don't know if you know this, when you put your bare feet in the dirt, on the grass, anything that God has made, grass, sand, whatever, your body moves out of fight or flight into rest and restore. There's some sort of magnetic-y thing that goes on with the polarization of the earth where you then unite to that polarization. That think of it like magnetism or an electric current, and it actually promotes healing in the body. So, it's important that you take care of yourself because you have work to do for the kingdom. Right? It's like your car. You take it for an oil change, or maybe your husband takes it for an oil change. I said to my husband earlier today, "There's a lot that you have on your list that I don't really know about, isn't there?" He's like, "Yeah." Because we have 2 cars that burn oil, evidently. I didn't even know that was a thing. And so periodically, he needs to refill them. I think one of them takes like 2 quarts or something, 2 quarts a month that he has to refill. I don't ever think about that. Periodically, he's like, "Oh, don't leave yet. I have to go put oil in the car." And then he does it, right? That's as involved in that as I get, right? So, we take care of our vehicles because they have to get us somewhere. We need to take care of our bodies for the same reason. And I gotta tell you guys this, and I'll give you the link to this because it's pretty cool. I had been feeling like Pilates would be a really good, like, move for me. I've been kind of in between exercise rhythms, and I wasn't sure what to do because I needed something that felt more soothing, but also would make me strong, and it needed to be short. There's this app called Lindywell that rocks. I just started using it this week, so I can't say forever and ever I'll love it, but y'all, 3 of the days a week, it's a 5-day-a-week exercise program. 3 of the days a week, it's 15 minutes or less. 2 of the days a week, it's 30 minutes or less. There's nothing on the weekends, and literally, you can search for whatever exercise routine you want, but if you want to just open the app and hit today, it gives you that exercise routine. You do the routine, and then it gives you, like, 4 to 5 minutes of breath work. It's awesome. She's super encouraging too. So I'm gonna give you guys the link for that too because it's super, super cool. Okay, so where are we now? We are going to keep hierarchy of covenants in mind when we're making decisions, and we're going to have it in the back of our mind too, just looking at the order of our relationships. How is everybody doing? Okay? So like first priority, and we're going to talk I have a guide called From Overwhelmed to Overcomer. And that guide helps you identify because you cannot fight a battle on all fronts. So overwhelmed to overcomer helps you identify what is my highest order priority in my life right now. So if life feels crazy, you're feeling overwhelmed, grab that guide. I'll give you the link to that in the show notes too, and get clear. What is my one thing that I'm working on right now? And listen, if your relationship with the Lord feels out of order, you don't have any sort of like time with him, or you don't feel very worshipful, you feel like you and he have some business to tend to, that is the first thing you're about. Once that's in order, and I'm not talking perfect, you don't need it to be perfect, just like settle a couple things with the Lord, then you move on to your marriage. How's that doing? Then you move on to your relationship with your children, each child individually. Look at each child individually. How's this one doing? How's this one doing? How's this one doing? And tend the people. Along the way, you're taking care of yourself because you really can't function if you're not. Okay? So, whether you're facing a decision or you're just living your day-to-day life and you're looking at who needs tending, that is the principle of hierarchy of covenants. Man, y'all, I thought at 20 minutes, I was like, wow, I think I'm wrapping this thing up. And here we are, not 20 minutes anymore. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And until next time, you've got this. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of She Considers a Field. If you found value in this episode, I would be so grateful if you would leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts, and be sure to share with a friend who needs some encouragement on her journey today too. Until next time, remember, you've got this because he's got you.